that go in, 12 come out, and 10 of them give a bad report. 2 of them give a good report. Let's consider the 10 men that gave a bad report. What did they do? Well, in order to take a good look at what they did, we take a look at the plagues in Egypt. The first thing they did was that they created a lack of faith. The water to blood. The second thing they did was they created doubt. The frogs. The third thing they did is they created distractions. Small things that in their eyes, talking amongst themselves, became big things. The gnats. Confusion. The swarm. Presumption. The boils and the banes. It affected the relationship that they had with Elohim, both physically and in the spirit. The death of the cattle. The fruitfulness that they could have had begins to die off. The hail. The locusts kill off the balance. Now comes the darkness. They're no longer able to perceive the light. And finally, their spiritual death, in that they are turned away from the promised land. As we approach Rosh Hashanah, we have to start to look at ourselves to find out where we are as far as the Spirit. Now is the time to begin to bring those things to the surface that have been clouding our ability to truly hear and see, or for us to cross the Jordan, so to speak. The children of Israel had to turn around and venture back into the wilderness until all doubt and fear died off. It would be 40 years before they had another chance. They had to turn back into the wilderness so that everyone who doubted and everyone who gave a false report from 20 years and up died off. And the funny thing is that they said that the children of Israel said that, are we going to enter into this land simply to be destroyed, that our young ones will be destroyed? The irony is that it was the young ones who were going to be left, the ones that were new, that would enter into the promised land and have life. 40 is a number of transition. This is a time to begin to seek Elohim, and not a time to say blindly, I will attack because Elohim is with me, while doing it on a spur-of-the-moment spark of faith. And if we read chapter 14, 39 through 45, Cliff Notes version is that they were sorry that they had said no, and now they're going to take it upon themselves to attack. Moses tells them, don't do it. You're going to be destroyed. It's too late. So what do? They go and they cross over and they try to attack, and they are just really, really defeated. And they come back defeated. They went contrary to Elohim by not believing in his word and to enter in to take possession of the land. Now they go contrary to Elohim in a false repentance to take the land by their own strength. The outcome is that they are sorely defeated. It is easy to say I'm sorry in a transgression against trust. And even though I forgive you is the outcome, it is often too late to do it right as it should have been done when faith and trust existed. Let me say that again. That it's very easy to say I'm sorry when we transgress trust, when we transgress good faith. And it's very easy to hear, I forgive you. But what's not easy to do is that trust has to be rebuilt. And simply because we say, I'm sorry, forgiveness does not equal trust. Trust, the renewing of faith, takes transition that can only come through time. And during this time of transition, learning and appreciation take place that strengthens the bond and the relationship, making it stronger than it was. They didn't believe. Something had to happen for them to be able to have a strong, valid relationship. And those things that caused them to not believe had to die and be left buried in the desert. And that's something that we equate to, we equate it to sin when the priest puts the sins of the people on the head of the goat and sends it into the wilderness to be forgotten. But we have to understand that transgressing, not having faith, is also one of those sins that needs to go into the desert to be forgotten. And now they're going back into the desert for the 40 years, the time of transition. The children of Israel had two opinions to pay heed to. One of physical perception based on carnal doubt, and one of spiritual perception based on the promise from Elohim. The question that we take with us and deeply consider in our prayer and study time between now and Yom Kippur is, which opinion am I going to pay heed to? We have Rosh Hashanah is coming up, the 24th of September, I believe is when it starts. And then 10 days into that, we start Yom Kippur. So it is a time for us to think things through. And when we come to the month of Elul, it's really a time to start searching ourselves. Where is my trust? Do I really trust in Elohim? People think, and I've said this before, but it's worth mentioning, that the only time I have to believe in God, the only time that I have to believe in any of that stuff is on, we use Sundays and Wednesdays, okay? Or in our case, Fridays and Tuesdays. That the rest of the time it's irrelevant, and the rest of the time all that God stuff doesn't matter. What we have to realize is that we have to turn our focus around, in that Elohim is our reality. And the rest of the stuff that we live in is the delusion. And I don't want to get all metaphysical and stuff like that, but what I'm getting at is that our relationship with the most powerful entity in existence and beyond must be the focus of our life. Everything else is added to it. And Yeshua said, seek first the reign of the heavens, and everything else will be added to you. Okay? So this lesson deals with building our spiritual relationship with our Elohim. Tonight's Parsha continued on with the base found in Shalach, meaning send. Another concept to consider in the Parsha is the order in which this lack of faith grew. Elohim tells Moses and the children of Israel to take possession of the land, telling them that he is delivering it and its inhabitants into their hand. Elohim has told them that the land is good. He's told them, go take possession. I'm giving it to you. I'm going in front of you. You don't have to worry about it. The land is good. There's fruit there. Land flowing with milk and honey. What's the response? The people go to Moses saying, we want to observe the best routes in and the routes to go to various cities. We say, okay, no harm here. Innocent enough. What is the best way to go about doing what Elohim has told us to do? And that's Deuteronomy 1, 22, 23. But this leads to Moses saying, okay, first go look at this angle and then go look at it from that angle. Take soil samples to make sure the soil is good. What are the people that are there like? Are they strong or are they weak? How many are there? Is the land that they dwell in good or bad? What kind of dwellings do they have? Is there wood? Bring back fruit. Before you know it, it doesn't matter what Elohim has said. I'm going to really take that kind of risk, or am I going to take that kind of risk based on the factual data I've collected, or am I going to stick with what Yahweh Elohim, again, the most powerful entity in existence and beyond, has told me to do? That has just shown me a myriad of miracles that I've seen with my own eyes. That to not have faith, I have to be a real idiot to not have faith at this point. So what am I going to do? Am I going to go based on my fleshly perceptions, or am I going to pay heed to Elohim? We must study the Word to be able to listen to our Elohim with truth, but when we overanalyze, we tend to stray away from the Word and get entangled in our flesh and blood perceptions of what the Word says. This becomes and is now legalism. This is our desire to go back to Egypt and to bondage. Yeshua said that by yoking ourselves to Him, we would find tranquility in His heart. The word and promise of Yahuwah Elohim are to bring us peace. If we are struggling with it, then we are being manipulated by the evil one. We know that Satan, behind the serpent, manipulated the word so that Isha, without Ish, by herself, was tricked in a sense, because without Ish, without prayer, without study, without worship, then spirit stands alone. And there's a myriad of things that the spirit can be deceived in and by itself. And then we get into legalism. And one of the questions that was asked Tuesday, and I kind of briefly skimmed over it, was about Shabbat, because we discussed that one of the points in the parasha was the man caught picking up sticks, that he was executed because he broke the rule of not keeping Shabbat, or not keeping the Sabbath day, not remembering the Sabbath day. He went contrary to the word. First of all, if we look at it from an extremely topical point of view, the days of the week during the time of Moses were not Sunday through Saturday. Those words didn't even exist.
Right.
Okay? It's the first thing. We cannot be sure, therefore, what the seventh day truly is, if we look at it from that point of view. Now, like everything else, into our culture, into our language, we have adopted Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So now everybody is saying, well, the Sabbath is Friday to Saturday, and if you don't observe and remember and observe the Sabbath Friday and Saturday, then you're failing to observe the Sabbath. And Constantine changed it from Saturday to Sunday, and if you observe on Saturday, you're going contrary to the church. You have to observe it on Sunday. The Talmud is very clear that you have to observe it from a very specific time Friday night. They talk about there's got to be a certain amount of stars in the sky that says it's officially dark, and you observe it from that point when it's officially dark, and it ends when it's officially dark because there's a certain number of stars in the sky on Saturday night. And during the Sabbath, you can't light your stove, light a candle, you can't turn your car on, you can't flip a switch on your television, you can't turn on a light switch. Basically, everything that the rabbis have defined as being work, you can't do. And it has become very, very strict. Now, people still say they have a good time. They make sure all the lights are on the day before. They make sure that they cook the meal slowly so that it cooks all the way through Shabbat, so that they don't have to turn anything on or off. Sometimes they serve the food cold. The point is that we've gotten away from understanding what the greatest gift that we have from our Elohim is, and that's Shabbat. That we find peace and rest in our Elohim. As the seventh day, it is a representation of the Zion. A letter that represents His rest for us, His protection for us, and His care and nourishment for us. The seventh. The first time we see the word Yom which is day. In Torah is in Genesis 1:5. It was the name given to the light. The light separates us from darkness. It is in the word Yom that we find the Yod as the root of the letter in Yom, the name given to the light. And in that we see in the Yod the truth, power, and the ability of Elohim to bring us life. So in the seventh day we can understand that it is the light from Elohim that brings us rest, protection, and nourishment, and that by his truth, power, and his ability, we have the fullness of life. This is why we remember the seventh day. We are remembering that it is through the light of our Elohim that we have rest. It is through the light of our Elohim that we have protection. Through the light of our Elohim that we have nourishment. But we'd rather get hung up pointing fingers concerning what time of the week to rest on based on our man-devised calendars instead of understanding and heeding to the word of Elohim. Joshua, in the stories that we've just read in Shalach, was originally called Hosea, meaning salvation. Moses gave him a new name by adding the Yod to his name, making it Yehoshua, meaning Yehovah is salvation. We as physical beings need to rest, and taking an entire day of the week to do so is to our benefit. But we must understand that the Sabbath was made for humankind, not humankind for the Sabbath. It is Yahweh Elohim's gift to us, given out of love for us, that we would be able to be in his image by his word. When we remember and observe the Sabbath in spirit and in truth, then we, like Hosea, have the Yod added to us. And because of this, we enter into the true restoration found in our Elohim in the name of his word and salvation. Our rest, Yehoshua. That is the seventh day. Now, we say, well, it's nice to be able to keep Shabbat from Friday to Saturday. And it really is. It's a tradition. And it's a tradition like a lot of traditions that it is very pleasant to be able to hold on to. And if we get to the point where we have Friday to Saturday off, then it's a wonderful thing to be able to rest on that day. But like I said, Tuesday, even if you don't have the entire day from Friday evening to Saturday evening off, I'm sure that in that space of 24 hours, you have some time that you can step back and say, I'm devoting this time during this seventh day in our modern day count to dedicate to remembering the salvation that my Elohim sent for me, to remember the light of his salvation that brings me life, to remember that it is Yahweh Elohim through Yeshua HaMashiach that brings me, I'm not going to use the word salvation because the word is actually restoration, that restores my inner being, that restores my soul, that feeds me, that protects me in those times when I just want to sit down and cry, that I cry out, Master, help me. But I take time during that seventh day that I've come to understand as being Friday to Saturday, and I take time. If I don't have time, then I dedicate time somehow, some way during the week to take time to rest in my Elohim. But ideally, if we want to stick to the legal mode of things, if we can find our rest from Friday evening to Saturday evening, then that's what we should try to do. If we have to work, then we have to honor our Elohim by being good stewards of what he's given us to do. But we're not going to be at work 24 hours. And I can come home, we can come home, and take time to